I'm Mariane Power, co-founder of the Posify Group and your host again for today's episode. Well, the path between school and work seems to look a lot different today than it used to when we were growing up, or at least that's what you hear in the media. But for some of us, including Lucy Sattler, my guest today, the path is kind of familiar. Lucy's career is anything or has been anything but straightforward. She's a multi-potentialite of a human who's carved her own version of success, dipping and diving into multiple after-school pathways from serving fried chicken to coordinating military air traffic for the Royal Australian Air Force. And today, she helps hundreds of thousands of kids and their careers teachers, all their teachers, find out what life after school can look like for them as the founder and CEO of Study Life Grow. She's also a mum to small three humans. So I'm guessing that co-CEO role probably takes a bit of place in the home life. We're going to cover all this and more. Lucy, welcome. This is such a long and overdue conversation. I'm thrilled to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's brilliant to be here.
Oh, we've seen you jet setting all over the place for Study Work Grow, and we're going to get there. But speaking of jet setting, can we go back, because part of your career journey I just found so fascinating is going straight from school and into the Defence Force. Tell us a little bit about what prompted that. Why Defence, and what did you learn?
It felt like a natural decision for me, actually. I grew up in Western Sydney, right near Richmond Air Force Base. I'd grown up seeing the Hercs fly overhead all day long, and it just felt like the place where I should go when school finished. So I was 17 when I left school, and I applied for ADFA, and I was really lucky to get in. And that was just a huge learning experience. I went from a very small little place where I lived in Western Sydney out to Canberra, lived in Canberra. And just got to do so much stuff that I never even knew existed. And I was in for just under 8 years, and I got to do some really amazing stuff in that time. I coordinated fighter pilots and Black Hawk helicopters on night ops, and a blimp once, which was really memorable.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a really good experience for someone. I was really, really young, but an awesome way to start out your career and to just really you're kind of in the deep end a bit, but, you're picking up so much and learning all the time. And, yeah, it was really, really great.
And I guess for those of us who haven't been to defence school like myself, I mean, we see the ads and the recruitment ads have come from school into the Defence Academy. And I guess for me, the imagination of being in military clothes every day and having to wake up at 4:00 in the morning and scrub my boots. And is that what it was like? Can you take us behind the scenes? What's Defence school actually like?
You're probably closer than you think.
Oh, okay.
Not as many 4 a.m. wake ups. It was sort of 5:30ish, but there was a lot of boot polishing and a lot of drill. But then lots of different opportunities to go and see different things and try different things and push yourself in different ways. There's a lot of focus on leadership. So I already felt like leadership was something that really called to me when I was in school. I was a school prefect. But going through ADFA really helps you hone those skills. So if leadership is something that's important to you and that you are passionate about, then that's a good place to go, because there is such a focus on learning those things. And I use those skills that I learned, like servant leadership, all the time today. And if I didn't have them, I don't think I would be able to achieve the things that I've achieved. I need those skills. So, yeah, it just was... it was a really interesting experience. I don't have anything to compare it to because I didn't go through normal university. So I didn't get to turn up in my pajamas. I didn't get to do all those things. It was just a different way of being, really. So, yeah, hard to compare, but I enjoyed it.
And I want to say really different to what you do now. At least to my knowledge, you're not kind of flying jet planes and blimps and organising military control. But having said that, there's a lot of leadership and organisation and time management, of course, that you would have transferred, I'm guessing, across from those earlier studies. But before we kind of go into that, tell our audience or our listeners who might be new to you and your company and what it is that you're achieving a little bit about Study, Work, Grow and your impact.
Yeah, sure. So Study Work Grow has been around for quite a while now. In its current form, it's been around since 2017. We work with over 500 schools across Australia, and we're now just picking up schools in New Zealand and looking to go to the UK. And we provide schools with career education resources. And what I mean by that is things like PDFs and videos, online digital tools, and also some print tools that just makes their careers advisors' lives so much easier. So when they're working with students, they're not having to go and create those resources from scratch. We've done that for them. They can have the really good stuff, the one-to-one conversations, the class time with students. They can focus on that and leave us to collect all the information in the one place. Impact-wise, we measure impact in a few different ways. So we know how many people use our newsletters. It's around 300,000 each week, and then there's their parents on top of that. But we measure impact in terms of things like conversations and in terms of the number of schools that we work with who then tell us that they've been able to go and do more things or ask for more funding or instigate new programs because we've given them space to do that and we've given them the tools that they need to do that. So in those terms, I feel like our impact is great, and I'm really excited about how much more impact we can have. And being part of the community that we're in, I think gives us that ability to extend that impact even further. And that's what we're seeing with these career clusters, is that ability to spread the word and get further and into more schools and in with more students.
Yeah. And look, I'm going to be surprised if some of our listeners haven't come across your work already. But if you haven't, go check it out. Your resources are to die for. They're beautiful. They're so on point. They're so relevant and up to date. I just really commend the team for just the hard work that goes behind keeping it ahead, because it's a very quick changing conversation when it comes to the careers landscape. And I know our blueprints just come back out again here in Australia in the update there. And, for those teachers that are just so time poor and parents scrambling, thinking, how do I keep up with these conversations? Those resources are so helpful. To take it to your point, those meaningful conversations and the ripple effect they had. I want to get to those careers clusters. They're very exciting. But speaking of having to keep up with so much learning, and I'm noticing you're getting back to face as well as you're heading out and about in Australia. What are you finding with people's kind of learning styles around careers? We're going hybrid now, online learning versus face-to-face learning. Is there a difference? What should we be thinking about when we're thinking about kind of professional learning development, how to approach it?
I think that as with everything, flexibility and a hybrid kind of model is going to work really well because it gives you the best of both worlds. COVID's given us an opportunity to kind of really develop our online tools for professional learning. And that has been one of the positives that's come out of it, is that now we have so much more and we have so many more ways to network and to collaborate with people on, all corners of the globe. So that's really, really great and really beneficial. And then also it's great to see face-to-face coming back. And sometimes those conversations you can have in person are so much deeper than what you might have over, say, a chat or a Zoom. But I think there's definitely a place for both. We're doing a lot of work in the space of a professional learning network. So a lot of teachers will participate in these professional learning networks. They're on Twitter, they're on LinkedIn, they're having conversations, they're sharing resources, they're commenting and reflecting, really doing some really great reflecting, especially on places like LinkedIn. But they don't understand that counts as professional learning. They don't see that necessarily. They just think that they're having fun on LinkedIn or Twitter. And I think we need to do more to talk about that vicarious, really incidental learning that takes place in so many different ways, and it has so much power. And if we can harness some more of that, as well as the face-to-face and the seminars and the webinars and that kind of thing, I think we're going to really move forward a lot quicker and in a way that serves a lot more people than maybe the traditional kind of forms of professional learning did. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. And actually, I'm going to put a link back in the show notes to an earlier episode with Jan Owen, who, of course, is involved in Learning Creates and obviously a foundation for young Australia, who I know is really inspired. And you've taken what they've done with the skills clusters and grown that in. So that's a nice segue. Tell us a little bit about the careers clusters, how it came about that you went into this big question of what makes up the careers and what you found.
Look, it's just so exciting. The Foundation for Young Australians work, they did the New Work Mindset report, came out in 2016, came up with these ideas of these clusters, and they based theirs around skill sets, so very much around transferable and technical skill sets. And they did a lot of work to pull these. They had pull these 7 clusters together. And, they were sitting there in the back of my mind, and I had the report on my desk for so long, and I just kept thinking, how do I use this and make this something that we can then apply within a school setting, because it was really great and really usable. But so from a bigger picture thing, for many years, I've been very frustrated that we focus on individual jobs when we talk about careers.
Yeah.
So much of the time it's, what do you want to do when you leave school? Do you want to be an engineer? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be a carpenter? Like, you've got to pick a one thing out of this huge array. There's thousands and thousands of jobs out there. There's like 1,000 official jobs, but then there's thousands more, right? So how can a 15 or a 16-year-old be asked to pick from one of those? They're not going to be able to pick efficiently or in a way that's right for them. And we also know that they're not going to go leave school, go into that job, and then stay in that job for the next 45 years anymore. Like, that doesn't happen. They're going to have multiple jobs. So we needed a better way. And I kept thinking that you see these same jobs in every industry. So you have people who do finance in every industry. You have people who do the admin in every industry. You have people who do the sales and the marketing in every industry. And so we started with the Foundation for Young Australians clusters, and we started expanding them. And we used some of the work that My Future had done when they created their online profiling tool, and looked at the same sorts of things that they looked at, which was things like tasks, so job tasks, outcomes that job would like to achieve, work environment, so the sort of the setting of where that person's working, whether it's on a computer or hands-on. And we brought all that together with those skill sets that the Foundation for Young Australians had started talking about to develop these what we came up with, which was 6 clusters. And they've all got their own kind of unique flavour. There are 6, and they give you enough scope to see where you fit, but they're also really flexible. So, you're going to have a bit in kind of a couple of camps. And there's also going to be some clusters that you're like, oh, I'm definitely not one of those people. That is not me. I need to stay well away from that. But anyway, there's 6 of them, and we've been testing them in some schools with some students, and it blows me away how quickly the young people can identify which cluster they're in. They don't need to do the quiz even. They know already. And then they take away a little bit of information, and you can see them starting to reevaluate what they were thinking and what that might mean if they actually fit inside this cluster, and what else they could be looking at and what else they could be thinking about, rather than that narrow kind of, this is your job, this is the salary that goes with the job, these are the places you'll be, this is the courses you need to do. So that's why we came up with them. And I think there's so much work to do. We're nowhere near, this is just the start, and really want to involve the community in bringing new ideas in, because I can't have all those ideas by myself. So we're working with some schools who've got great ideas about how they can use the clusters and where they can slot them into their programs as well. So I'm really excited to see where it's going.
Yeah, me too. And, Jenna and I were dancing happy dances because we relate, when we're talking to young people, that idea of, well, what do you want to do? It's very overwhelming. And often the response coming back to us, oh, there goes my pen, was, well, how do I know what I want to do? And they're all talking about the fact that jobs of the future haven't even been created. And so similarly, we flip that question and say, well, what is it that you want to stand for? What's the impact through that lens of purpose? But what I love about these clusters, I mean, to your point around you can identify with a few, I do have a question. What do you do with multi-potentialites like you and I who are like, oh, that's pretty shiny. That's pretty shiny. Hello, shiny over there. Is that a barrier for career development, these meaningful conversations that you're seeing, or is it something that's helpful? What's the feedback coming back?
No, I mean, that world is gone. That world where we had a box that we sat in and we did one job for our entire career, that world's long gone. Like, the people who are going to find the new world the most exciting and have the most fun with it are going to be those people who are a bit different. They do fit in more than one box. And the clusters don't, I think we do have a tendency, especially in the career space, to want to profile people and to want to tell them, this is your answer and you need to go after that answer and that's it. This is not how the clusters work. And it's just a starting point for you to then go, cool, I know this about myself. What does that actually mean? Does that sit right with me? Do I actually think that, or maybe I'm a little bit over here? I've worked with some people who've done the early phases of the quiz, and it's turned up a cluster that they definitely weren't in. And that's answered so many more questions than, we knew the clusters they were in, that was easy. But the cluster that they weren't in, that has huge implications because they find that it was somebody who is not a coordinator, let me put it that way, definitely not a coordinator, trying to move into management. And I'm going, it's never going to work. You're never going to enjoy
Yeah.
that work. You're never going to enjoy coordinating and doing that because that's not who you are. So finding another way to use his particular skill set without having to try and rely on something that isn't working for him. So it is going to give us a lot of different ways to talk about work and about young people and bringing them into it and saying, what resonates with you, and using it less as a definitive answer and more as a conversation starter. So they might go home and say to mum and dad or whoever they live with, I'm a guardian. I'm in the guardian cluster. So that means I care about health and well-being. I'm interested in how people's bodies work, and I want to support other people to maintain their own health and well-being. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a nurse, but they can then have that conversation about all the different things that are in that space that they maybe hadn't thought about before. So it's more of a conversation tool.
Yeah. I had a thought around that as well in terms of conversation tools, because we get a little bit of kickback when we're talking about strengths in action or values and how they can relate to personal and professional development for young people, but also big people. And it kind of made me think around the idea that we've all got lots of values, in the same way that I think probably we can all look at the careers clusters and say, oh, well, I'm a little bit of the guardian, I'm a little bit of the innovator. And so which one am I going to go? And I think for me, it's helping a young person to say, okay, well, to your point, which part of this cluster excites you and energizes you? Which part of it perhaps doesn't match to your natural set of skills or activities that you would do on a daily basis, that maybe you feel a little bit more hard. If you did want to go down that particular cluster path, who else could we bring in that's got different strengths and different skills and abilities to support that and explore that? So I love that the clusters give that sort of ability to massage. But before I get too excited about these ideas, why don't we just quickly go through the 6 clusters for those who aren't familiar with them yet? Tell us a little bit about each of them and I guess what their profile looks like, or how we might understand something like a cluster, like a guardian, which we've heard already.
Yeah. So I'll start with the guardians then.
Yeah, start with
Guardians
guardian.
are they're these really cool people, and they're just out to help other people be healthy and really well. And these are people like fitness trainers and beauty therapists and tattoo artists and nurses and dentists and pharmacists and all sorts of different people, aged care, people who work in aged care, where they find success, and they feel that their purpose is in helping other people be healthy and well, and being whatever it is that they want to be. So that's where those guardians sit. And it's funny because when you're talking to young people, the ones who know that they're guardians, they are like, it is instant. Like, oh,
Wow.
That's me. Yep, thanks. I'm having that card. And it's like, that's the only one. The others they're a bit, they take their time with, but the guardians, they really, like, they know that's where they are.
That's interesting.
So then we have a couple of, so there's informers, which they're also there to support other people, but they're the people who have such great depth of knowledge of their subject area, and they bring that to then help other people. So, your teachers and your accountants and your lawyers, but also people like skydive instructors or horse whisperers, those people who've got just this really great embedded knowledge, who can bring that to support other people in the things that they need to do and the work that they're wanting to do. We have innovators, who are, your designers, your engineers, and that's one of the big departures from the Foundation for Young Australians clusters. They had designers and technologists. I'm of the belief that we're moving towards a world in which design and technology are pretty much going to sit one on top of the other. Whether you're designing using technology or you're designing new technology, you're still, if you're not using technology, there's very, very few people who now are in that camp who are not also using technology in a really heavy way.
Yeah.
So it didn't kind of make sense to split them up. So we put them together, and that's a really interesting camp of people, because it does have your traditional people who are designers, but then I think it's probably going to be one of those spaces where there are people like learning designers, like you and I, to some extent, sit within that innovation camp. We might not be creating a new car, but we're still using that creativity and that kind of innovation in a way to design something. We have coordinators, which that's my biggest cluster. I like organizing things and keeping things on track. And it's funny because you say coordinator, and we did spend a lot of time trying to find really gender neutral, really no names with any bias for all of the clusters, so that they didn't didn't bring any kind of connotations. And coordinators are one of those spaces where you have people who are, admin, like business admin trainees fit in that cluster. But then you have CEOs and you have politicians who are, prime ministers technically sit within that coordinator cluster because they're organising and bringing people together and making stuff happen. Yeah, so we have a linker, which is actually, it sounds salesy, and it tends to include all of those people who are working in sales and customer service, but it's also people like flight attendants. So they're there just to help a group of people get whatever it is that they need, answer all their questions, support them with the things that they need, and make that happen for them. So those linkers they might be helping you find a product that you need, whether that's through a sales role or, as a real estate agent, for example. But they're also kind of playing that real role of being the interface between whatever the product or service is and the public, being that real bridge that brings the two together. And then the last one is, I think that's the last one, maker.
So, the maker. I was waiting for the maker, one of my favorites.
I love the maker. So these are the people who make stuff happen. So they grow and they build and they fix and they maintain. And it's such an interesting cluster because when you start, you're like if I wrote the careers that were in the maker clusters down, you'd be like, I don't get it. I don't understand how they go together. But then when you start talking about the fact that they all tend to use their body, it's quite a physical role, and they tend to, they're moving equipment. So they're using technology or they're using equipment to make something happen. So a pilot is a maker. They are physically sitting in a cockpit, and they are monitoring, and they're using their body to make the plane do what it needs to do, and using a heap of technical equipment to do that. The same way that a plumber is also a maker, and that they're using their tools and their equipment to go and make that happen. Data technicians who are maintaining technological systems, they are also makers. They're also making stuff happen. And people like cleaners who are really just using their equipment and their ability to keep things running. And we couldn't live without these people. They're such an integral part of society. So it is a really interesting cluster. And we've worked really hard to get all 6 of them. Sorry?
Do you put artists and theatre makers into the maker space as well? Or is that just my assumption of I've gone down that pathway, you'd maybe move them somewhere else into the career clusters?
You would definitely. So if you've got a practicing professional artist, I was a professional artist for a few years. I earned my income off being an artist. And part of what I did was making. I was using my tools and my equipment to create a product. Somebody else commissioned me to give them. That was how I made my money. But I'm also an innovator. And I'm also probably in some ways back then being a bit of a linker because I had to sell my own things. So I'm using all of those skills, but probably the biggest, it's more about where your biggest skill set is, or the thing that you use the most. So in that context, I was using my innovation all the time, and I was really having to work my brain to think of ways to be creative and to so that was probably where I sat. Just pulled some other clusters in as well.
So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, I think about what I do today, and to your point, it's kind of across all the clusters, and I think we can mold and shape them whichever way, but having a look again and remembering this is a conversation starter. This is the more that you kind of dip and dive and think, well, hang on a second, where could I sit? Or where do I want to sit? Or where do other people that I admire sit? And how do they use the clusters? I can see so many transferable ways to look at the clusters as a great way for meaningful conversations, because we know from the research that one of the most, in fact, I think it's got the greatest effect size in terms of a young person figuring out that after school pathway and what kind of magic they want to create in the world. It's a conversation with another adult, and without tools like yours and these conversation starters, they can be really hard, but with these tools we can scale those conversations as people are more equipped. So yeah, look, Jen and I are just your biggest fans. We're so excited about the clusters and their capacity as well. Speaking of all of these opportunities in the world that young people have got going on, we do tend to hear some of the overwhelm at Posify, and you're like, oh man, where do I even get started? And I'm just curious, when it comes to these conversations, in addition to the careers clusters, what do you see as being integral to helping reduce a young person's anxiety about their after school pathways?
I think there are some awesome people working in this space at the minute, trying to shift the conversation away from what do you want to be when you grow up, make a big decision that's going to haunt you for your life, and they're breaking that conversation down and they're breaking that decision down into, okay, cool, what's next? Where do you want to go after this? Like, what's resonating with you right now?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, what's the next step? And a lot of that conversation has to happen with parents in the room, because unfortunately we know that, well, fortunately parents are like the biggest influence over the young person's decisions. But we also know that parents often hold beliefs about the workplace that may be somewhat outdated, or that may just need bringing into line with what we know is happening in the space right now, because the world of work that they entered when they left school 20 odd years ago is very different to the world of work that the young people are entering. So we need to bring parents into that conversation and just make it really easy for them to see that it's okay for them to just pick whatever it is that sounds right to them next. And it doesn't have to be for life. And then there isn't a wrong, if they're following a path that they're interested in and that resonates with them at the minute, then that's got a really great chance of leading them towards a good place where they do want to be longer term, and taking the pressure off in that way. So and I'm not leading that conversation. There are fantastic people out there. Jim Bright, his Chaos Theory of Careers, he really talks about that what next. There are a lot of great people out there who are sort of running that conversation. People like yourself, what's your purpose? Like, stop worrying about the big questions. Just like, what's your purpose? Where do you want to be? And that's making a huge difference, I think. And I'm starting to see that coming through a little bit in the conversations we're having with young people now.
Oh, that's amazing.
Hey there, I wanted to tell you about an exciting and innovative solution we've been designing to help solve this problem of how we best prepare the next gen for an ever-evolving world and future workforce that's going to demand a whole new set of skills and mindsets in order for them to thrive. The Posify Academy is Australia's first student-led, evidence-based and curriculum-aligned wellbeing and career development platform, helping young people aged 10 to 14 uncover and deliver their unique potential. It's the first of a trilogy series that's helping young people move seamlessly and with confidence from education and into industry as they design a life and a career of impact. Teaching skills like communication, compassion, creativity, critical thinking, agility, curiosity, resilience, problem solving, all those human capability skills that we talk about here on this podcast, and connecting them with a sense of purpose. To learn more, you can visit theposifygroup.com.au/posify-academy. Now, back to the show.
The what's your purpose question does tend to land with that's equally as intimidating. So we're trying to break that down by saying, okay, well, what impact do you want to create too? Because purpose kind of also sits in that big overarching, I have to come up with one purpose. And that's not the case. And, you've got that lived experience of actually we can have multiple purposes across our lives, and looking at where those values map across not just your career, what you want to do for work, if you like, or earn your money, but, what's your personal purposes and what are your community purposes and how does that all fit together? But you're right. And the more people that are coming into the space and offering different ways of looking at things, I think the richer the conversation can be. I really feel for parents who perhaps themselves had quite linear pathways and who that linear pathway led to success, and that's the one kind of vision that they have in their mind, because it must be really scary for them with these kids entering a world where there's so many opportunities landing, even in the little devices that they hold in their hands every day. Who's not wanting to talk about being the next TikTok star or the next influencer or YouTuber and this and that. And, at the same time as it's fantastic, they're seeing all these different opportunities where there's that mismatch from a generation perspective. That can be really challenging. So I definitely appreciate your role and your work as we're doing as well in involving parents in and upskilling. And it's interesting. I don't know if you've had this experience as well, but we're finding that the more work that we're doing with young people, and, ours extends as well into the professional capacity, working in companies and Gen Z there. But actually we get a lot of parents coming back and saying, well, how might I be able to transfer my skill set across into something different? And I'm curious if you've also had any of those conversations. I know I'm throwing us off script a little bit there, but yeah, it kind of sparked something for me.
Yeah, we definitely have. We do quite a few school expos where we'll go and we'll just meet some students within a school setting. There's universities there and TAPEs and different employers groups and things, and we just come along. And it's funny how often the teachers will come up to us and they'll be like, where do we sit in these clusters? Or, what careers advice can I have?
Totally.
So I think that I think adults are just as much in need of support and tools to help them visualize and understand where they sit. A lot of us who, are sort of midway through our careers now, maybe the last couple of years has made us rethink, well, is this where I want to be? Is this the right career for me? Am I heading in a path that I want to be heading in? But having a starting place for that conversation, or even that thought pattern, it's tricky. If you don't sure where to start, it's just way easier to stay on the path that you're currently on.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably worth mentioning, is that when we talk about young people who haven't yet transitioned into the world of work, it is easier because they're not yet on a path. As soon as they're 25 to 30, or above, they're on that path, and there's that, like, it's almost inertia. They don't want to step off. So, giving them the tools to think a bit deeper about it and to spend a bit more time exploring when they've left school and really finding it out when they're younger, really can help in avoiding that down the track where, if they pick the wrong thing, or they realize that they've picked the wrong thing down the track, it's sort of harder to unpack a little bit.
It gets more complicated,
which is where those early conversations come in. Yeah, it really does.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think especially if you throw, after school study pathways in the mix, and people have invested a lot of time, a lot of money often to go down a particular path, and not necessarily sort of thought about, where might this land me after study. So I agree. Yeah, the earlier we can have those conversations, and I think the intergenerational benefits as well between parents. For anyone listening who's kind of like, oh, well, I'm going to leave that conversation to school. I think you rob yourself of the opportunity to explore your own career pathway and what all of these magical things mean to you. Because we didn't necessarily grow up with the rich resources that are available to the kids today. So why not take advantage of this, parents? Start thinking about how it might apply to yourself, and gain as much insight from the young people that whether it be your kids or a nephew or a niece or a friend that you're chatting to, and start reflecting on your own journey as well. I think we can all learn from each other. But I think for us, at least, the most exciting thing about working with kids is the place around purpose. And I love your social impact page for this reason, Lucy. I'm going to quote you here because it reads, "We're inspired by those we serve. Youth movements are championing a world of positive change, leveraging technology to influence millions of people and generating a groundswell of support for diversity, equity, and inclusivity." I mean, apart from the fact that that's just beautifully written, and I just want to nod to your copywriting there. Tell us about purpose for companies who are, we know, like, by 2025, they're predicting 27% of the workforce is going to be Gen Z, right? So I know we're talking about school, but actually for companies, this is their not so future workforce. So for any organizations who maybe haven't quite tapped into the call for really thinking about value for the planet and people too, and this idea of purpose and impact, what would you say to them? Why is it important to start embracing purpose in the workforce?
Yeah. If you've got an employer who's not embracing it, I would say good luck. They are going to find it hard because this next generation is so bright and engaged, and they're passionate, and they're really, really exciting young people. And you don't have to go far, or you just have a conversation with a young person, someone in year 9 and 10, like they will lift you up. And they know how to use technology in a way that's native to them that I don't know how to use it. I mean, I built a website, but I still don't know how to use it in the way they do. They're going to have all of these skills, and they're going to learn in the workplace. And for those employers who aren't keeping up, or who aren't interested in changing their operations to suit, this 25% or more that's going to be coming through, that's going to be a really big thing for them, because you need those young people, and you need those new ideas to stay relevant and current. And fight it if you need to, but why would you? Like, they bring so much to the table that I think that the more that companies can embrace youth and can embrace these young people and really give them a platform to some extent, or a place in which they can grow their own ideas and to really put to use all of their intelligence and their critical thinking skills that they've all developed. They've all got them from school. They all know about growth mindset. They can tell you exactly what it means. If you're not using that, you're not going to be able to employ them, but you're also going to be missing out to your competitors who are embracing that and using that to the best of its ability. So that would be my take on it. Good luck.
You've heard from Lucy, call to action, get amongst the purpose movement companies. And I also want to highlight something you said, which I think is so relevant, that their speed of learning. It just blows my mind. I sat on the couch with my little fella, and I know you're also a mum. I'd be curious to hear, what you learned from your kids. We were watching Shark Tank together, which I love doing with him because he'll just jump in right at the top and make a prediction about what's going to happen, what the judges are going to say. I'm like, okay, Jack, we'll see. And so we sit there and every time, see, told you. But his process of being able to trace that back to the clue as to where he could spot the pattern for how a judge was going to make a decision. And then I say, well, where did you learn that from? Bit over here, bit of YouTube, bit of a book, bit of a TikTok, bit of a this. Their pattern seeking is extraordinary because they've got so many ways to gather information. Gone are the days back when we were kids. I don't know if you remember the Encyclopedia Britannica that would line up. We were lucky we had a GP for a grandfather. So we'd go up the road to his library and you'd pull out the A, but then you'd get stuck. You're like, oh, I'm going to have to go to the library. They've got so much information. So to not embrace that in the workforce, I just think you do encyclopedias if you want to, but these kids are walking, talking Wikipedias. They blow my mind. How about yourself, Lucy? What are you learning from your own kids as well and parenting that just really reminds you of the importance of this space and the work that you're doing?
So mine are getting a little bit older. I've got a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old now. That's been an interesting journey because for the first time I'm having to go through subject selection and making these big choices and starting to talk about careers.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they're pretty switched on kids and they seem to take care of most things themselves. They're very inquisitive. They're very curious, and I think that the world that we live in now. Where they, like you just said, they've got everything on tap. They can answer those questions for themselves really, really quickly. They know to go to YouTube or to go to Google and get that answer. And I think that's something that I'm getting better at. Things like the other day, so we've started watching stuff with subtitles, which apparently is something that teenagers do. And to start with, I was like, that's horrible. I'm not doing it. But now we watch everything with subtitles. And I pick up so much more, even from a documentary. I'm picking up more, and it's going in differently. I'm absorbing the information differently. So I think they've got so much to teach us, and we have to let them show us though in their way. So they don't want to use the same types of methods that we use. They want to text and they want to share videos. They want to communicate through sharing a video. Mum, I thought this was really interesting. Can you watch this, please? So doing that back with them, I'll share interesting articles that I find with them, or I'll share interesting videos, or we'll just sit and watch YouTube together, and they can direct, and that's totally fine. And we'll find out all sorts of stuff together that I didn't know about, and they know way more than we do. I think these young people, it's about empowering them and allowing them that space to build those skills even more as much as we can, not to try and shut them down and get them to do things our way, let them do things their way.
Yeah, there's definitely a coming to the table, isn't there? And I know when we're in organizations, there's a lot of conversation around that negotiation between the generations and how do you get them talking to one another when there is a fixed position. Well, this is the way that we've always done it. And then a young person coming in and say, well, I'm not doing it that way because that just doesn't make any sense. And so, that art of negotiation between the going halfway and coming to the table. But I think without getting involved in their landscape and seeing particularly our kids are the same age in that sort of teen years and seeing what it is they're engaging with, I worry about the dangers of that too. If we just leave them on their own and don't show any interest, they're going to go and look anyway. So getting amongst those conversations, I'm sort of starting to wonder how we could start wrapping the careers clusters around some of the things that we're watching actually, now that I'm thinking about it. The world of Gen Z, we could talk for ages, but I'm wondering if we could wrap up on a question, magical thinking wise, given we've talked about your own children and of course the hundreds of children that you serve through your work as well. If you could wave a magic wand, Lucy, how would you like the future world and workforce to look for this next generation? What would you change?
So the reason why I do what I do is because I want people to feel successful. We know that successful people feel happier, healthier, they have better wellbeing indicators, they earn more lifetime income scores. People who feel successful, they're on a winner, right? And you can't start with an adult. You need to go back a few steps to be able to create people who find success. And I'm not talking about success like my version of success. I'm talking about the success for that individual person. So for someone who's First Nations, that might mean success in terms of being within community and within culture and really feeling like they've fulfilled what they need to within that space, and that's their version of success. For someone who is a caregiver, that might be completely different again. They might have a different yardstick for success. But just enabling everyone to be able to find that version of what success looks like is what I wish that we could do overnight. And I think the more tools that we develop and the more ways we give people to think about what success could look like and what might happen if they followed something they were passionate about and feeling purposeful in, which is where what your work comes in. The more we can do that, the more we can. So we don't need a magic wand. We can do that ourselves. Let's work towards this. And if there's enough people coming on board and we make it easy enough, these young people will do the rest of the work themselves. They that's not a concept that they don't want to grasp. They are passionate about their futures, and you don't have to talk to them for long to understand. They are very keen to learn what they think what they need to know to make the best life for themselves. And so giving them those tools, I think, is the best way to go forward with that. And hopefully one day, we will live in that world where it is so much easier for young people to visualize the future that they want to live in, and then go get it.
I love that. Lucy, how can people keep in touch with the good work that you're doing and get amongst it as well? How do we find you?
So you can find me in a few places. We're online, studyworkgrow.com.au. Our school's product's called Ponder. It's ponder.education. But you can also find me on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. It's my happy place. And find me, follow me, connect with me, shoot me a message. I always love to hear other people's ideas and other people's thoughts as well.
Thank you so much. I have to ask before we go, is that a bird in the background or is it the puppy dog that you were rescuing early?
No, it's the curlews.
Oh, they're awesome. It's almost like our Oscar singing out music. Off we go. We're finished now. I love it. They are beautiful. Oh, Lucy, I know that everybody's going to be dipping and diving into your amazing resources. I'm going to throw them all in the show notes as well, with that beautiful songbird out. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Classroom 5.0. And Lucy, for your incredible work with the careers clusters. We're super excited to be sharing them and doing our part too. That's all we've got time for today. So we'll see you later, alligators.
Classroom 5.0 is brought to you by the Posify Group, a socially conscious education company arming the next gen with a sense of purpose and the future skills they'll need to thrive in this ever-evolving world. Your ratings and reviews really mean the world to us, so if you loved this episode, please let us know and share it with a friend. We'd like to say thanks to our editing guru, Clint Rands, and his team at My Video Producer, who helped us put this show together and who have kindly sponsored Season 3 of Classroom 5.0. And for today's show notes, links, and more episodes just like these, you can visit theposifygroup.com.au/podcast. Thanks for helping us imagine alive the future of learning, work, and leadership. We'll see you next time.